Kick-ass facts, pew 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 pew! Let's talk about some crazy-ass things men tried to convince women of. Unless I tell you otherwise, all of these myths, methods of control, call it what you will, happened in the 19th century. Women were warned that riding bicycles would lead to a condition called bicycle face, characterized by bulging eyes, a clenched jaw, and a flushed face. The bicycle gave women newfound freedom and mobility in the late 1800s, which alarmed many men. The idea of bicycle face was fabricated in order to discourage women from riding bikes, as it symbolized independence and physical activity in public. Some doctors reinforced these false warnings, claiming that the exertion was unnatural and would harm women's fragile bodies. It was widely believed that higher education could damage women's reproductive organs, leading to infertility or hysteria. Some doctors and educators believed that intellectual strain would divert blood away from a woman's reproductive organs to her brain, thereby rendering her infertile or prone to mental illness. This theory was used to argue against women attending universities. Dr. Edward H. Clarke's 1873 book, Sex and Education, was influential in advancing the idea that women's bodies were not suited to rigorous intellectual work. From medieval times to present day, many people believe that menstruating women were mentally and physically unstable, unfit for public life, and even dangerous. They called it menstrual hysteria. Historically, menstruation was poorly understood, and many cultures associated it with impurity, irrationality, and disease. Menstrual hysteria was used to bar women from leadership roles, higher education, and careers, claiming that they would be too emotionally erratic or debilitated during their periods. This belief continues to persist despite advancements in medical science. Women were discouraged from exercising during pregnancy, as it was believed it could harm the baby or cause a miscarriage. Medical advice often promoted rest and inactivity during pregnancy, especially in the earlier decades of the 1900s. This advice was based on a misunderstanding of the female body and pregnancy. Modern science has debunked these claims, proving that exercise can be beneficial for both mother and child during a healthy pregnancy. The restriction kept women sedentary and passive, reinforcing traditional domestic roles. This may or may not surprise you, but this is going to be a two-parter. It was commonly believed that women were incapable of understanding complex matters like finance, legal contracts, or property management. The belief in women's intellectual inferior extended beyond education to finance and law. Men argued that women were naturally irrational and impulsive, which made them unsuitable for handling money or managing property. These ideas helped justify the legal and societal restrictions on women's rights to own property, enter contracts, or vote. Even well into the 20th century, women often had to rely on male relatives for financial and legal decisions. Opponents of women's suffrage argued that voting would overtax women's delicate nerves and emotional constitution. As the women's suffrage movement gained momentum, many male opponents claimed that women were too emotional and irrational to be trusted with the vote. They argued that women's roles were in the home, caring for children, and that engaging in political discourse would corrupt their morality or cause undue stress on their fragile constitutions. The belief that women were naturally nurturing and passive was weaponized to keep them out of the public sphere. I'm just taking a look at my notes. It might be three parts. Women were discouraged from participating in sports or physical activities, especially those requiring running or jumping, because it was believed that their pelvises were too weak to handle such exertion. Women were actively discouraged from participating in sports, as it was thought that their anatomy made them too delicate for intense physical activity. It was claimed that such activities could damage their reproductive organs or prevent them from becoming mothers. This argument was used to reinforce the idea that women's bodies were primarily for childbearing and should be protected from strenuous activity.